Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar, which is going to be focused around transitioning to professional management. We're going to be talking about a lot of different topics today, and the format is going to be somewhat of a conversation between myself and my fellow colleagues over here. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce you to my colleagues. We have Doug Weinstein, who is our Vice President of Operations, and we have Vishal Kura, who is our Vice President of Hospitality and Training for ACAM. Today, we're really going to be diving into the various phases that go into a successful transition. But before we even get there, a lot of boards, their first concern when even considering a third-party property management company is trust. And we try to make it clear from the beginning that regardless of whether you're self-managed or you're managed by a third-party property management company, the board and the association still always maintains control of decisions that are made. So let's start with the process. I'm sure many of you that are on this webinar have already done some of the things I'm about to mention, but just to summarize, you as a board member initially need to take inventory of your current management situation. Look at what you currently have. Then speak to experts and come up with what it is and where it is that you want to go and how that's going to look. And then ultimately come up with the plan of getting there. So let's jump right into it and talk about once you've got to that point and you've decided to go with a third-party property management company, how it's going to work. The first step is the primary transition phase. In the primary transition phase, there are two critical elements. Every element of a transition is highly important, but these two are critical, specifically when you're coming from self-management. The first is the onboarding of your employees. In most cases, many of your employees have been with the property for a very long time. Residents and board members have built a relationship. In some cases, they even consider them family members. Employees tend to get nervous, along with the residents on behalf of the employees, on making sure that the employees are taken care of, that they're not losing anything, and basically making them feel comfortable that this move is not affecting them in a negative manner. So during this phase, it is critical that the management company that you're working with obtain all of the pertinent information with regards to PTO, any accrued paid time off, the existing benefits that they get, such as health insurance, the policy for PTO, and so forth. This way, the board can put the employees at ease and the management company that they are coming on board with the new management company. However, they're not losing anything. In most cases, they're gaining, and they're gonna be a part of a big team. And most importantly, again, we as the management company or any management company that you may go with is not in control of ultimate decisions with regards to staffing. So that's one major area. The other is the transfer of your files. This needs to be done in a very organized manner to make sure that everything gets into the system of your management company and is set up to ensure a seamless, smooth transition. This includes all of your files and records, your existing accounts payable, your existing accounts receivable, making sure that all the pertinent insurance policies are collected. The company should have a very detailed transition protocol checklist that they're working off of, so that it's not a guessing game, and basically it can be followed along for everything to be put into the system of the management company. I do want to mention that there should not be an expectation that there will be no bumps during this process. As is with any transitional process, there are bumps. It's just a matter of moving forward. And you have to keep in mind that when a property that has been self-managed for a long time, certain things have been done a certain way for a long time, and it can take a little bit just to kind of facilitate the new process of having a third-party professional management company on board. I'm now going to hand it over to Doug Weinstein, who is going to be talking about the financial review element of your contracts and so forth. Doug?
Sure, thank you, Reagan. One of the things, as Reagan just discussed, is he discussed the assets of the association in dealing with your employees as an asset and other things. I'm going to deal a lot with the physical asset of the association, the actual building itself, the operations, and how we and what we do in our transition for that. So I want to start out with one of the first things we do an intake of the association from an operations standpoint. And the first thing that we do is we do a complete matrix of your existing contracts. We like to call it the 3 C's of contracts, which is coverage, conformance, and cost. And what we look at is number one is the contract the right coverage for what the contract is for, whether it be a service, whether it be a piece of equipment, or otherwise. We look to see that you are getting the right coverage for that instance. The other is the conformance. We also look at, has the existing vendor been living up to the terms of the contract, whether it be an elevator contract that requires that the elevator company perform monthly maintenance visits aside from trouble calls, to a pump contract where lubrication is dictated, say semi-annually, that it's being done. And then finally, we analyze the cost. And one of the things that you do get in a management company as opposed to a self-management is, since we have a lot of clients which basically have the same equipment, same contracts as your buildings, we will be able to compare them, and we compare and contrast. The same thing we do, as Reagan said, with budgeting. With our expertise with numerous clients of the same type of association, size, physical structure of the building, we have a lot that we can compare it to. The way I basically give the analogy from my end is kind of like a medical practice. When you're self-managed, you're kind of going to a sole practitioner. But when you come to a management company, you're coming to a general practice with many practitioners of different specialties. And that's where we come in and we give you those access to those specialties. We also look at utilities. One of the things that we find with self-managed properties after they come on board is that the utility rate classifications that the building has are incorrect, or the sales tax amount that the building is paying is incorrect. Now, in Florida, as you're aware, we have very little control over utilities other than gas. Electric is not deregulated, and you're only able to do one provider. Gas, different story. If your building has gas, whether it be for a generator, whether it be for a barbecue grill area, or another sort of physical plant item, that we go out to the marketplace and we try and see what we can get for the commodity from there. That is something that you may not have done as a self-managed property. The other thing that you do get when you go to a management company is their buying power. We are constantly out in the marketplace, anything from not only just supplies, but for service contracts, for per cab elevator contracts cost. We also, again, are able to negotiate enhanced coverages with our vendors in terms of service contracts that might be beneficial to you as an association. But the thing that ties it all together is really the support that we give you, the manager and the team at your property. Okay, we have specialists and Vishal will be covering employees shortly, but we have specialists in physical plant, specialists in financial, specialists in financing for those buildings that are undergoing capital projects that are looking at financing those. So it brings together a whole, as I said, bring it back to the practice where you have many different people of different specialties all at your disposal. So again, the biggest thing that we find is that when we get a self-managed building coming on board, is they're grateful for the fact that they can now in-house avail themselves of all of these, whereby a lot of that they would have had to have gone outside the community for that in the past.
Thank you, Doug.
And also,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, wondering, just one last thing to add, is we also are able to compare your association in terms of budgeting with similar associations. So we'll see, and we share that information with you in terms of, what you're looking at as opposed to other buildings of your size. Although no two buildings are alike, that's a misconception. Every building is different in different nuances, but we have the capabilities that you don't have as a self-managed community to basically become a part of the family that can pair and work together on costs and containment.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. And just quickly to piggyback on what Doug mentioned, as part of the transitional phase, as part of protocol, it is a practice of ours to have various contracts analyzed up front. So that includes your insurance policies, utilities, as Doug spoke about, your cable contract, security contract. We have specialists internally that will review these contracts, not only to look for savings, but also to make sure that you're getting what you're supposed to get. And this is just basically part of protocol that a management company, what we do, that all management companies should do as a best practice. I now want to introduce you formally to Vishal. As I mentioned at the beginning, training personnel has become such a major factor. And I'm sure for you as self-managed building, even though you have a lot of loyal employees at your property, are experiencing a lot of personnel issues. So with that, Vishal, please.
Well, thank you so much, Regan, and thank you, Doug. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on here. Like Regan said, talent is one of the most important factor when we do take over a building. We look at what the existing talent is, who are the existing team members, and how do we build culture from there. So a lot of the times when we're coming in, we're not looking to change culture of the building, because it all starts with culture. We look at what the existing culture is. How do we elevate it from here? We do a needs analysis. I come and do a needs analysis as to what is required, what needs to be done, and then we do a gap analysis as to what is the gap between the expectations of the board, the residents, and the actual service levels they are being executed on a daily basis. And when we talk about service, I think service is one of the most important part of any business. But an even a more significant differentiator is elevated service. It's the actions of your team members that set a high-end building apart from another. The personality, the professionalism of your team member is extremely important. It's the crucial that they possess the ability and relate in a more personalized, service-driven environment. So when we come in, we go through different phases of hospitality training, where the first phase of hospitality training talks right from the word of your appearance. What is the team member's appearance? The uniform. We talk about the service touch points. How do you greet the residents? What kind of a language do you use when you're connecting with the residents? How do you assist the residents? What is the protocol when you are diffusing any kind of resident complaints or requests? How do you make sure you're handling them diplomatically and sensitively without being intrusive? We talk about how do you manage expectations? How do you create that anticipation and create that yearning? Because it's all about creating an experience. And what we train our team members is that every service touch point needs to come up with an experience, because what sets people apart in a building is the experience of the service and the expectations that are executed on a daily basis. So we go through also all the service touch points, and training is an ongoing work with ACAM. What we believe with ACAM is that we are constantly evolving, we are constantly growing, and we use the same concept to set our team members up for success who are working in the building, to make sure that they are executing the level of service they have been trained for. And training happens constantly in different phases. And a lot of the times when training is done, there is a follow-up, because to make sure that I work very closely with the property manager. So there is an accountability factor and component built into the training to make sure whatever was taught is being executed. We curate feedback from all the residents as to how are they feeling about the service levels. Are we meeting their expectations? Is this what they're looking for? And based on their feedback, we tailor training, because a lot of the times we tailor training to make sure that we're meeting the expectations and providing that service. When a lot of the times people ask me, what is good service? I always tell them, good service is like giving somebody a well-tailored suit. It needs to be fitted, hemmed according to the person's needs. So we train our team members to make sure they are personalizing service at all levels and making sure they are creating that experience on a daily basis, which is elevated, and also makes sure that the residents feel at home and they feel welcomed whenever they walk into the building. And that's the whole part of the experience, the ACAM experience. It's all about creating a rewarding residential experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. And I really should have at the beginning, we're doing our best. We want to make sure that this webinar is about best practices. But when you're going through this process, as I mentioned in the beginning, you want to make sure that you're working with experts that are specific to their field. When you're self-managed, no one person can be great at everything. So, for instance, Vishal came from the Waldorf Astoria, and I always get it wrong, Vishal. How many countries did you work in? Was it 70?
Yeah, so my background is in training and talent development, and I've had the privilege and the opportunity to work in 72 different countries, where I went around globally opening different Conrads and Waldorf Astorias. I was working with Hilton Worldwide. So part of my job was to go to all these countries and open these hotels and train all levels of staff on service training.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's important that, as the resources that you're going to, and you're going through this transitional phase, is to know that every area is very different and every culture is very different. As Vishal said, you want to customize it to the building and the area. And we obviously have a lot of respect, Vishal, having worked in so many different countries, in understanding the different cultures in the different areas. Doug's been with ACAM for, 30 years now? He's seen one or two physical plants in his time. So why don't we lead off into the next segment, which is preventative maintenance and property operations. And Doug, if you don't mind, just share a little bit about your background. It'll really put it into perspective and what you're going to be speaking about.
Sure. As Regan said, I've been with ACAM a little over 30 years now. And unfortunately, I don't have the international experience that Vishal does, but whereas he has been to that many countries, I've been to many more than that many buildings. So we kind of think of a building as a country as well. But anyway, while we're doing what I had spoken about earlier with the initial intake, we're also looking more globally at the association that we've just been brought on board with. And we do a few things in that regard. One of them is we are very big believers in preventative maintenance of physical plant, in that a penny spent now is going to save you $10 more down the road. So we look at we do a physical intake of your physical plant components, and then we develop an actual preventative maintenance for them. Anything from, air conditioning filters on your RTUs should be changed at such and such intervals, to lubrication of rooftop ventilators, to deodorizing and cleaning of compactor stacks, that type of thing. And we don't just give a program, because we could come in, we could do a great document that has all the bells and whistles, but what we also do is our department, which again goes back to the availability of specialization that you can avail yourselves with. Once we put that plan in place, we make sure that it's followed. So we have field personnel that are at our buildings constantly, checking, going in, making sure that preventative maintenance items are being done. They're tracked by program-wise in the building internally, and they're also tracked through our main office here. Another thing that we'll do is we'll look at your emergency plans. As everybody knows, we're at the start of hurricane season. Based upon our numerous years of experience with hurricanes and with recovery, we'll build together both a hurricane plan for both a pre-season plan for your residents to follow, as well as protocols for the building staff should an intense hurricane hit our area, or just in case mandatory evacuations are called, because mandatory evacuations trigger a lot of physical plant items in a building that a lot of people are not aware of, things that have to be prepared to prepare a building for things such as that. And also, one of the things that we do in terms of our overall review, and which is very important to buildings, is we look at, is your building have any sort of potential for greening initiatives? There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There's LED lighting replacement, whether it be just relamping existing fixtures or putting in new fixtures. We can take a building through that if that already hasn't been done. There's other low-hanging fruit. There's things such as VFDs, variable frequency drives, for equipment that may not have them, that may be able to not only cut down in cost of running that piece of equipment, but lower the carbon footprint of that. So we are very educated, and we go through our buildings with greening potential as well.
Thank you, Doug. We're coming towards the end of the program. There is a Q&A box in the bottom. I know we've received a few questions. If anyone has any questions, feel free. We will be running the webinar until 1:45. As part of the last section, we really want to close off and really bring everything together on everything that Doug, myself, and Michelle have been talking about, is that moving from self-management to third-party management, really, there's very little risk. And the concept is you only have to gain, and you're bringing with you a depth of resources. So if you want to break it out into different departments, you have energy, you have insurance, you have banking, you have recruiting, you have operations, you have HR, and the list goes on and on. And in each department, a management company should bring an expert that has years of experience in that area of resource to provide to your property. There's no reason that the property should be relying on a property manager and the board, who are all volunteers, to be responsible for all these areas. So we come in, part of transition, we set everything up, we work with the board, we're very transparent. Every management company should be transparent in everything that they're doing. And it's important to remember that the board and the association maintain control of all decisions. We are there to provide the property and customize our offering to what the property needs and help you get to where you want to go. So with that, we'll open it up for any questions. If there are no questions, we thank you very much today for joining us. We'll just leave it open for a minute.
There is a question, I think. There is a question. One of the attendees.
Yes. Contract phase. It does seem that a concern of some self-managed communities is tying themselves to a contract. And just to discuss the process, during the evaluating of the various management company options, you will be presented with a contract. The contracts are never set in stone with any of the management companies, the ACAM, of course. That is something that is negotiable. That's something that counsel, that it's the counsel would work with your association attorney and our attorney and come to mutually agreeable terms for the contract. You got to keep in mind that you already are in contract with a variety of different providers right now. It's just not centralized. You have a payroll processing contract. You may have a maintenance contract. You have various insurance policies like workers' compensation for the employees that would fall under our umbrella. So there's a lot of things that you already have now. So there's a misconception about that, but that process is very seamless. And you know, in the 38-year history of ACAM, we've never not moved forward with a partnership because of a contract negotiation. So
I think,
okay.
Reagan, we also have another mention of compliance.
You want to take that one, Doug?
Sure, absolutely. One of the questions was in terms of how do we handle various compliance issues, and compliance is covered under our operations department, or as with other management firms will be covered. And what we do, or what is done there, is compliance in a number of different areas. Not only physical plant compliance, like for instance, elevator inspections, generator performance tests, also things such as, which is very common now or very pertinent into the condominium world in South Florida, is the ELSS, the Engineered Life Safety Systems compliance, which we are thoroughly helping all of our clients manage that, along with certifications, whether it be 40, 50, 60 year in Miami-Dade and in Broward, but also compliance, which has been very important over the past year in terms of all of the COVID directives that have been coming out through both federal and state and local municipalities. And what we've done is we've worked with our associations to make sure they were in compliance with original, whether it be mask mandates, sanitization procedures, things such as that. While we hope that this never happens again, but that is also a part of compliance that your management company will assist your association with.
Thank you, Doug. We'll take just one more question as we're running out of time. There's a question, and it's interesting. We actually get this a lot with regards to being a little more specific in the trainings. Vishal, I know the last time you were here about 3 weeks ago, you did a module on the art of managing people. And question I get a lot, because obviously with COVID, as Doug mentioned, there's a lot of frustration with residents. You want to talk a little bit about that module and just in general?
So the whole module that covers art of managing people talks about how do we manage people. Managing people in today's day and age is not an science, it's an art. It talks about how do we work with a multi-generational workforce. How do we manage them effectively? This is the first time in the history of the world there are 5 generations working together. It's never happened before. You know, says a lot about our social security systems. But however, going back to what I had to say, that this program, we talk about how are we managing our building teams effectively? How are we recognizing them? How are we engaging with them? How are we inspiring them instead of managing them? How are we giving constructive feedback? How do we make sure that we are holding them accountable and making sure that whatever they have been taught, they are executing it on a daily basis? How are we bridging the performance gaps from what is expected from them as to what they're doing? So this program teaches all our managers to make sure that they're carrying out this effectively on a daily basis, and when they're managing the teams in the buildings and making sure they're all set up for success to provide a service level that is something that we are very proud at with ACAM.
Perfect. Well, Vishal, Doug, thank you so much. I hope that the audience enjoyed our presentation today. Please find our email addresses here. Mine is rmarak@acam.com. Doug's at dweinstein@acam.com, and Vishal's bkura@acam.com. It would be our pleasure to answer any further questions that you may have. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.